Welcome to Chat with the Lawyer. I'm your host, Walla Blagay, and I'm honored to have two guests, Arnette Steele and Ashley Lamb from the law offices of Arnette Steele, PLLC. And we're going to talk about issues of tax, immigration, and tax and estate and trust. And those are very, very important issues. They often integrate, and these two experts are going to tell us more about it. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so tell us about your practice and how you started this.
So, by training, I am a tax lawyer. I had worked at Skadden Arps right out of law school doing tax law, and then I switched to transactional. And then I left Skadden and I went to Discovery and I did more international tax planning there. But then I just decided that I wanted to work with people. I wanted to, I felt like there was a need, and I just enjoyed helping people start their businesses or immigration issues. And so when I left Discovery, I just decided, I didn't just decide, it was like a little bit of a long process, but eventually decided to start my own firm. And so I had always wanted to do trust and estates from the time I took trust and estates at the law school. And I also wanted to do business acquisitions. And what I found actually is that, and I thought I was just going to get a lot of trust and estates work, but because that's a need that everybody knows that people have. But then I realized that there aren't too many lawyers who are trained to do business law, like mergers and acquisitions or drafting partnership agreements.
Do you mind? So you say mergers and acquisitions so easily. The average person is like, what? It's foreign language. What is mergers and acquisitions? Explain that.
Well, mergers are when two companies want to merge, right? And so on a bigger scale, you hear that when, we have these huge corporations who are merging, or an acquisition is when you're buying, one company is buying another. And so there aren't, that's mostly on the corporate level, like huge corporations like GE and, AT&T, the major ones. But there are plenty of small businesses who join partnerships, who are acquiring, one of my first clients was a dentist who was acquiring another dental practice here in DC. So I found very quickly that there aren't too many lawyers or small, like solo practitioners or lawyer at small practices that do that kind of work. And so I actually got an opportunity to do I've had an opportunity to do a lot of that. And so after I started my firm, very quickly after, I was in touch with Ashley, who we went to law school together. And I am naturally interested in immigration because I'm an immigrant. I'm from Liberia, and my family had immigrated here. And even when I was at Skadden, a lot of the pro bono work that I did was immigration work. And I, naturally fell into that practice. But I had not had so much business immigration experience, which is what Ashley brought to the table. And then once Ashley came in, she'll explain a little more about what she does. But when Ashley came into the picture, we realized that there was this intersection between business immigration and tax, which a lot of very small firms don't have. And we realized that we could provide a much more comprehensive service to our clients who were interested in that.
Interesting. So Ashley, tell us how you came in.
Okay, well, like Art said, she was working on her set of issues, which kind of touched immigration, and mine really touched the business and investment side of immigration. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't really think about. You hear a lot of people talking about, getting married or sponsoring family members, but a lot of people don't think about the business implications of immigration. So, for example, if you have a business, if you want to hire somebody who was born outside of the US, you actually have to go through a process in order to get that person authorization to work inside the United States.
So tell us about that process. What is that process?
Okay, well, there's lots of different pathways, but the basics that I'd like to share today are, number one, if somebody is born outside the US, and they would like to work at a U.S. entity, they would first need work authorization from the Department of Homeland Security. And usually that would come in the form of a temporary work visa, also called non-immigrant visa. But you'll hear a lot of times people say, I want to get sponsored for a job, right? What they really mean is green card. And unfortunately, there's no short process to get a green card in this country. You know, some people will call me and they'll say, oh, I've got an employer, they're ready to sponsor me, can you help me apply? And unfortunately, it's not that immediate, it doesn't work that way. So this is something that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of times what we have to do is be a lot more strategic. So first I have to find a non-immigrant or temporary pathway to get somebody status to be able to stay and authorization to work.
Okay.
And then usually after we get that ball rolling, we can then come up with a strategy that would then give them a longer term status, which is usually green card, which means that they're a lawful permanent resident of the United States.
Now let me ask you, how long does that green card process, how long is that?
It really depends. I know that's the typical lawyer answer, but it depends. Some people actually can go directly to a green card. It usually takes about a year and a half plus, but it really depends on the pathway that they choose. The Department of Labor actually works very closely with United States Citizenship and Immigration Services on the employment-based visas. So a lot of times, if we're going for a work-based benefit, like a visa, a green card, we have to go through this whole clearance process with the Department of Labor before we can even apply for the visa with USCIS.
I see. Okay. Okay. Well, another thing I want to talk about is you guys walk people through the process of immigration. I saw that something that you have on your website. What do you do if somebody comes in and says, I want to be a citizen? What should I do?
Well, there are a few things like Ashley says. Sometimes, a lot of times, as you know, clients will just come to you and say, this is what I want to do. And the first thing you have to figure out is one, do you qualify? Two, how do we get you there? And what's maybe the fastest, quickest way? And then we explain the risks and the benefits of each way. And so if we have someone who comes in who wants to be a citizen, generally either they already have a green card, they've had one for 5 years, or they're married to a U.S. citizen and they already have the green card, or they've just had one. Either they come through the employment way, which Ashley already explained. And so in that case, let's just say we have the person who's had a green card for a very long time, which is one of the clients that we have, then the first thing we explain to them is, look, we're not just here to fill out forms. All of the immigration forms are online.
Right.
You don't have to pay for them. You can go to uscis.org and download, or gov, and download the forms and fill them in. We obviously have to do that in order to apply, but we counsel them through the process. Our clients come with different issues. For example, some are not confident about their English speaking skills. And so we counsel them through that process. Some of them don't want to apply just yet. They want to know, how do I prepare to apply? And once I am prepared, what do I do next? And so we assess the individual, and then we work with them through the process. Some people come to us and they're just like, I want to get my green card. I filled out the form, but I don't want to send it in because I'm afraid I didn't, fill out something and it's going to get turned away. That person, we will say, okay, that's fine. This is what we can do for you. You can fill it out, send it to us. We'll review it for you. If you want us to talk you through the process of what happens next, if you want us to assimilate your documents, if you want us to put all of that stuff in order for you, we can do that, just to make sure that you've, checked off your list, to make sure you have everything, you sent it to the right address. So we offer different types of service depending on the type of client.
Okay, and do you go to the interviews with them? And
if they would like.
Okay.
Right, and so we can either go to the interview with them, and if we do go to the interview with them, generally we will help them prepare for the interview. Right. And something that a lot of people don't know is that there are some videos on the website that will go through the questions that you'll be asked at the interview. And so we go through that with our clients. We give them an opportunity to answer the questions. Some of them are very shy. When you're interviewing with someone who decides whether or not you're going to be a citizen,
it is a nerve-wracking process.
Yes. I went through it, and and I was extremely nervous. Right. I mean, it was right up there with taking the bar exam. Right. So our clients are very nervous, and a lot of them want us to be there with them.
Right. Interesting. Well, what about someone that says, look, I came to this country, I have kids in a third world country, they're not living well, I want them to come here. How do you help them?
Well, I would say that's one where we would definitely want to take more of a strategic approach.
Okay.
So this is the kind of phone call where somebody actually needs to come in, sit down with us. We need to do like a really good screening, consultation to find out more about their background. What previous filings have they submitted? You know, maybe the reason they're coming to us with that situation is because they've tried something in the past that hasn't worked. Exactly, and these are all things that we would need to know before we could offer a competent response. You know, and I think that actually that's something that our practice does differently from a lot of lawyers. You know, a lot of people will call and say, okay, I need this. And so the lawyer says, okay, fill out these forms, here's the price, pay me now.
Right.
And I'm like thinking, no, that's not the way that a practice should work. We should have an open dialogue with the clients, really understand their real goal, not just what they asked for. So that way we can figure out maybe there's a better way or a faster way or a safer way for them to obtain the benefit that they're seeking,
Right.
which is different from what they actually asked.
Now, but walk us through the process. They call you, they say, I want to bring someone. Do they have the ability to do that? If that, what type of process is that?
It depends. Let's go for, to give you an example, I think it'll be easier
The
to
quicker
understand.
process.
Right, okay, so marriage. Let's say marrying a US citizen. That's about the fastest way that you can immigrate to the US.
Okay.
So that usually goes in 2 phases. If the person that wants to be sponsored, let's just say they're outside the US. Okay, so there's a marriage. After the marriage, the US citizen would file what's called an I-130.
Right.
And that is the petition to sponsor an alien relative.
Okay.
Okay, so you're basically filing to USCIS and you say, hi government, we have this qualifying relationship with each other. Please acknowledge us and let
Right.
us move to the next phase.
Right.
So once that part's approved, then you could do the I-485, which is the application to adjust status.
Right.
That's the part, once it's approved, that gives that foreign national status
I see.
in the
Okay.
US. So only once it's approved can they then enter and come.
Wow, this is such good information. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back and go more into some other scenarios. All right? Thank you. Welcome back to Chat with the Lawyer, and we were talking with Arnette Steele and Ashley Lamb about some of the issues of tax and immigration. So let's jump back into it. We're talking now, let's shift into businesses. Now let's say somebody wants to hire foreign workers. Those are type of things that you might work with. Tell us about the process.
Okay, well, let's give you a good example of one benefit that's very popular. It's called H-1B. And H-1B is really great for foreign-born workers who are performing a specialty occupation. That means that to be qualified, they need to have at least a bachelor's degree in some kind of specialty occupation, like maybe computers. That's very popular right now. So this type of benefit is really great because let's say somebody comes here as an international student and they're about to graduate and they want to know, what can I do next? So an H-1B visa gives them a really great opportunity to have up to 6 years of status and work authorization in the US. It's also great for employers, any viewers who may have a business, because it's a good way to sponsor someone long enough to feel like, hey, I can see this person is really making a great contribution to my business, and they can decide whether or not they want it to be temporary or long-term. Okay, but anyway, so in H-1B, the person would find a sponsor, a business. That business would then work with an attorney to prepare the petitions. And the important thing about H-1B is it's very, very, very attractive benefit. So there's a lot of people who want to apply, but there's a deadline, April 1st every year. So any businesses who are interested in applying would want to be preparing their petitions in February and March. So right now is actually a great time for any of your viewers who are thinking about sponsoring H-1B workers. So they would want to, get their plans together in the fall, decide whether or not they want to commit, because there is an expense. Employers do have to pay every part of the case. They have to pay the filing fees to the government. They have to pay the legal fees. So it's an important consideration, but for employers, this is one of the cheapest ways to sponsor a foreign-born worker.
And you mentioned computers, but what about construction workers, or more like does it have to be computer based, or what are some of the other professions?
It does not have to be computer-based, but construction would not qualify.
I see.
Because construction workers usually will have some kind of labor specialty, but it doesn't require a bachelor's degree. So the H-1B workers must have at least a bachelor's degree, and some of them even a further advanced degree, like a master's.
Okay. Now, I know this is a complicated situation, but what if you run into a bunch of workers that don't have any status right now? They might be undocumented and they want to work for you. What would be your advice to somebody who called you about that?
Well, for employers, that's a really tough situation, yes, because they actually, employers will have liability if they hire workers who cannot clear the checks with Department of Homeland Security. So for any employers, I would advise them not to do that unless they see proper documentation.
Okay.
Because they actually face penalties in the thousands of dollars.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, what about the tax? How does the tax fall into this?
Well, so the way that so our tax practice varies, right? So we have transactional. So when you have either someone wants to, acquire another business, or they want to enter into a partnership, or they want to form an actual entity, there are tax considerations depending on the type of entity that you form. If you form an LLC, it's an entity that limits your liability personally, but that's just from a state law perspective.
Right.
From a tax perspective, the IRS does not see anything around that entity, because all of the profit that you make or any of the losses that you make, it's what's called flow through. It goes up to the person who owns it.
Right.
And so you can choose an LLC or you can choose a partnership. A partnership is similar to an LLC, but you just have two people who own it, so it would flow equally generally to the two people, or depending on what your partnership agreement is. And so we will, we'll counsel
Do you
clients.
draft a partnership agreement?
Right, we draft a partnership agreement, and general, this is what you want to do. This is not, this you want to give yourself these rights and that rights. And we also will put proper tax provisions in the partnership agreement. For example, just to give you a very quick example, I don't want to get too complicated.
No, it's fine.
But if you earn, let's say your business, there are two partners and you're splitting it 50-50. So let's say your business earns $100,000 a year after all of your expenses.
Right.
That's how much you have in the bank.
Right.
So you're going to get 50, the other person's going to get 50.
Right.
Right? Well, let's just say, we don't want to pay each other $50,000. We don't want to take all of the money out of the business. Let's just leave 50 there. So I'll take 25 and you take 25. Well, the IRS says, hey, that's great that you want to leave that money in your business, but we don't care because you've earned that money. So
Okay.
we are going to tax you on it. And so, well, a lot of times what we'll do is so now you have $25,000 that's in your business, but you're going to have to pay tax on it. And so a lot of times we'll put into a partnership agreement that at the very least, the partnership will distribute income to you so that you can pay for those taxes. Okay, so even though we want to leave $50,000 in the bank account, we want to maybe give you whatever your tax liability will be on that $50,000 so that you can pay for it. And that's pretty much standard. That's, so we go through all of those different things to see, when you'll get a distribution, what that distribution means, how long, how do you claim it on your taxes, who is going to do your taxes. I personally don't do partners, I don't do taxes. I work with the accountant who will do your taxes to let them know, this is how we're classifying this income versus that income. Another thing that we do is we do get a lot of international business. because this area is just has a lot of international foreign people, and a lot of foreigners are very entrepreneurial. They have access to another market, which is either their home country or some other country, and so they want to earn income from that country, which makes sense. But there are a lot of issues. The minute you send income abroad or you receive income from abroad, there's a huge, IRS, their antennas go up because they're thinking, that's money we can tax if you're bringing it in, or they're thinking that's money they're trying to get out of the country so that they don't tax it.
Don't they tax that money higher if you earn it somewhere else and bring it into the United States?
It depends. And again, not to give you the typical lawyer answer, it just depends on the type of corporation that you're bringing it from.
Right.
So if the corporation in the foreign country, it's considered to be an LLC for IRS purposes, then it's just as if you own the business here. And then the money, and depends on the type of activity, because the IRS classifies certain activity as ordinary income, which is the 9-to-5 job you do every day.
Right.
And then they consider certain activity as passive income, which is when you just rent a home and you just sit back and collect money.
I see.
And so depending on what kind of income it's classified as, it may go to offset your other income, the losses, or it may not. It may be considered capital gains,
Right.
which is taxed at a different rate than
Right.
ordinary income.
I see.
So, to give you an example, we had a client who was talking to his business lawyer and said, oh, I want to enter into this JV in my home country where this company wants me to facilitate payments. They want to service clients in the US, and they want for me to collect the payment and send the payment to them in the other country. Well, the problem with that is whenever you are paying money to a foreign person, the IRS says you have to withhold, meaning you have to keep 30% of that income and pay it to the IRS.
Wow.
So you can imagine if this person in the foreign country is like, okay, we're looking at you collecting $10,000 a month for me.
Right.
And then you say to the person, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm going to take 30% and
30%
send it to
of
the
your
IRS.
work.
The person's going to be like, okay.
This doesn't work out.
Right.
No business deal.
Exactly. So it's a big, but here's the thing. There are two things. If you don't know this and you just send that $10,000 a month,
Then you owe the IRS.
yes, you have that liability.
$3,000 for every 10,000.
Exactly. Now, like all good tax code sections, there are exceptions, and there are exceptions to exceptions. So the exception is if there is a treaty in place with that country, a tax treaty.
What countries?
Whichever country. Oh, there are a whole bunch of countries.
Give an example of one.
Oh, for one, India. Another one, the UK, France.
Okay. So
Generally, the IRS has tax treaties with countries who tax people.
I see.
So I can give you one that does not have a tax treaty, and that's Kuwait, because they don't pay taxes. So the whole idea of the tax treaty is to say, we want people to do business across borders, but we don't want people to pay taxes in both places. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to pay taxes in France on all the money you earn in the US,
Right.
and then have to pay taxes in the US, you're not going to want to do business.
Right.
So we'll sign a treaty with France that says you can tax the people who do business there, or if they're French citizens, or if they file a tax return.
Right.
And we'll tax our people.
Okay.
We'll allow it. Now, sometimes it's not always zero. Sometimes it's okay, instead of that 30% withholding provision, you can only withhold 5%.
Right.
Now, it's 5%, but it's much better than 30%.
Right.
So these are all things that we walk our client through. And so, you can imagine when you tell your client, oh, you're going to have to withhold 30% if that's the only extent of your knowledge. That client's probably going to lose the deal.
Right.
But being able to say, wait a minute, there's a tax treaty. And because of this treaty, you actually don't have to withhold, or you can reduce it to only 5%. So, we run through that all of the time. And the other way how immigration and tax comes into play is America has what's called a worldwide tax system. So that means if you're an American person,
Right.
you get taxed on the income you earn anywhere in the US. Now,
That means anywhere in the world.
I'm sorry, anywhere in the world.
So is that why Tina Turner said, I'm dropping my citizenship. I don't have time for this.
Exactly. Now here's the thing. What an American person means for immigration is completely different than what an American person means for tax purposes. Okay. There's a formula. If you stay in the country for more than 183 days, you could be considered an American person. Now, IRS does not care what your status is. They want their money.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So a lot of people think because they're not a green card holder or because they're not a citizen, they don't have a tax obligation. And so one of the things that we explain to clients, especially a client who says, we had a client like this who said, we're living abroad. I'm an American. I'm dating my boyfriend. Should we get married now or later? Or when we come back to the U.S., and we're planning on coming to the U.S. at some point. So I said to her, well, let me just tell you this. Once you marry this person, he becomes an American person. So he now has to file a tax return. So you got
double tax liability.
Well, and the thing is, not because you have to file a tax return means that you owe, because there might be a tax treaty, right? But you have to file a tax return.
And if you don't, you end up in jail. There you go.
Not all the time.
But most of the time. So
let's just say you should file a tax return, even if you don't owe, any money. So, those are all the things that's how we would counsel someone. So, we would say, look, the minute you become an American person, the minute you sponsor your girlfriend or your fiance or whatever, this person now has a tax obligation. And that's fine. Most people are like, sure, whatever. But at least they know.
Well, this is really good. We want to thank you both for coming on this show. We're going to have you guys come back. This is really important stuff, and there's so many scenarios. It must be exciting. Every day is a new day.
It is very exciting. And when Ashley and we work very closely together because we're not that big of a firm, but when we get to work on the immigration and tax and business all together, it's awesome.
Quite a good. All right. Well, thank you both for coming. Like I said, we will have to have you all come back. If you want to check out more of our show, you can go on our website at www.chatwiththelawyer.tv. And please stay tuned. Come back and watch more. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lourdes Stefan, host of Univision's Sal y Pimienta. Cancer treatment can steal your beauty, confidence, and self-esteem. It causes changes in your skin and your hair. But Look Good, Feel Better can help. Visit lookgoodfeelbetter.org to find a workshop in your area. Let us help you feel like you again.
Never look a howler monkey in the eye. We built the entire library out of recycled bottles.
Fried ants are delicious.
We finished a clinic in a rainstorm.
Really?
That was a confidence builder. My students actually ended up teaching me. So I learned this dance. I'll show you this dance. Yeah. In la keg, a la kin. The classroom was more of a class tent. Think managing a sales team is tough. Try working with 5 different villages. My alarm clock was a rooster. Beans for breakfast, beans for lunch, beans for dinner. We ate a lot of beans. I learned a 3rd language. My seatmate on the bus was a goat. Always include the village elders. Always. My morning commute was by canoe. After 2 months, I was ready to quit, but after 2 years, I didn't want to leave. I didn't know I had it in me.
Turn 2 years of service into a lifetime of experience.
Hola, soy Lourdes Steffen, presentadora de Sal y Pimienta. El tratamiento contra el cáncer puede robarle belleza, seguridad y autoestima, causa cambios en la piel y en el cabello, pero luzca bien, siéntase mejor, puede ayudar. Visite lookgoodfeelbetter.org y permítanos ayudarle a sentirse como usted misma otra vez.